There are three things that are real: God, human folly, and laughter. Since the first two are beyond our comprehension, we must do the best we can with the third.
Here is our star.
Who?
Jerry Lewis.
He's cute. He's fast. He's not scared. He's dear. He's sweet. He's what? He's sweet.
But the big question still remains.
Who?
Who is Jerry Lewis?
Ay.
Wow, I wish I could tackle a less complicated question.
Is he the poor, neurotic kid from Newark, New Jersey, who can't face the public? Is he the accomplished superstar? Is he this gifted film director? Who is the real Jerry Lewis?
I was the class clown. I had teachers that were going crazy. I was a troublemaker. Make people laugh. I'd do anything.
Softly in my ear, you breathe a flame.
It was fun.
Lover, when we're dancing.
Mr. Lewis, you are a complete nut.
Well, roll it. Go on.
I was 5. That's never changed. I've always been 5. It's the best age for a kid. I was born in 1926, Newark, New Jersey.
Jerry, what's your real name?
It is now. It wasn't when I was born. I was born Joseph Levitch, Levitch. And I have some other bits of information that'll choke you up. I'm sure you're not about to come back with, why did you change it?
When chandeliers start falling on the heads of the hoi polloi.
My father.
Although you may think it's an earthquake.
Good-looking man.
I know that's my voice.
Wonderful singer, great entertainer, and funny man. Funny.
His father was a singer and a comic who was very much influenced by Al Jolson, and his mother played piano and would often accompany Danny Lewis on his tours. His parents came from Eastern Europe, fleeing the kind of persecutions. They were Jewish. And they were both show business people as well. So in some ways with Jerry, show business was in the blood. One unfortunate consequence of his parents being entertainers was they were away from home quite a lot. So he grew up as kind of like the only child of the family, but a very lonely child as well, without siblings around, without kind of parental kind of contact all the time.
One time when his father was performing, his father motioned to him to come out, Joey, why don't you sing for these folks? Sing, Brother, Can You Spare a Dime? Now, Jerry's 5 years old, so he walks out all proud and he slips. Now, his foot hits a foot lamp, it explodes. He gets his first laugh. He knows already what he wants to be. Then you fast forward, and Jerry's 15 years of age, devises his own act. He calls it a record act. And he would have a record player playing behind him, and he would mime to whatever the record was doing, be it a piece of Caruso, a female opera singer, etc. It was hilarious.
My love, for no one else can end this yearning, this need that you and you alone create.
He was a very anxious child, but he could overcome his anxiety by not having to use his own voice. So he could purely focus on his body and his face, and the voices were supplied by others.
I went through school and started as a writer, and I wrote things for comedians. And when they didn't do it like I wrote it, I did it.
Danny Lewis was almost resentful to Jerry's career. Jerry's career progressed more in 1 year than Danny's did in 25, 30 years. Jerry Lewis was a household name in 1946. You know, how would you feel as a dad?
Here he is, Jerry Lewis.
Thank you very much. Good evening. How are you all?
His father had an agent, Irving Kay, who encouraged Jerry to become a performer. And Danny was so upset, he fired Irving. At that point, Jerry hired Irving, and Irving became Jerry's manager for the next several decades.
Nice to see all you nice people. I didn't hear you, ma'am. My father went up the river with a sack of cats. But I would like to say, I'm only kidding. You like the way a lady yells out all of a sudden? We have a two-act, it's a road company now.
See it in your smile, I hear it in your sigh, that we have found a feeling higher than high, my own.
And then I met him.
My only.
What a good day that was.
Oh, you're my Mary.
I was at a bar in Las Vegas, and there was a drunk at the bar who was giving me problems. Dean walked over and punched him in the mouth.
You all right, kid?
Yeah. You sure? He never touched me.
Wagon wheels, strolling down the trail one day, with my doggy at my side, got my 6-gun in my big hat, and
Jerry was an only child. Dean was the brother he never had. He got to be cheeky. he got to look up to somebody. Who's this incredible, handsome man? That's the guy I need.
I hear singing
Two and a half hours, unrehearsed. That audience went nuts. That was the birth of Dean and Jerry.
Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis Show. The Colgate Comedy Hour.
Everybody knows you love me.
Well, you were mean to me. You abused me and continually slapped me, and just how long do you think I could stand it?
The concept for the Martin and Lewis performance was basically a handsome man and his monkey, or the playboy and the puts. It was about two guys who were very, very different, who come together. Martin represented sex, Jerry Lewis represented slapstick.
And we're gonna be pals, right?
I would think so, Dad.
And Lewis was basically the architect of the act. He never wrote a lengthy script, but on a kind of sandwich bag, he just scribbled a few notes about, okay, we have these two guys doing this, and they do that. And so you have a basic structure, which he describes as blueprints.
I'm seeing you.
I think Jerry saw in Dean everything he wasn't, and vice versa. Dean saw in himself everything he wasn't through Jerry, and they fulfilled something in each other.
You're gonna sing the same song. Stay right there. I don't want. Yes, you're gonna. If I can make it.
Jerry made Dean cackle and laugh so hard through his physical comedy, but then Dean was such a wit that made Jerry laugh, and I think that's what bonds anybody in any partnership.
He made my life. I was hoping to be a success, and he made sure I was. We had so much fun. We had such a good time. And we'd say to one another, and they're paying us for that?
Listen, we want to thank you. We now invite you to swim. You've been wonderful. Brush your teeth with halo, halo.
They were rock and roll. They were rock and roll before rock and roll. They were sexy. They were the missing link between Frank Sinatra and the Beatles.
We need each other, brother. Without each other, we would be lost.
Well, as long as we're together, pals,
All things will weather, pal. We'll part when sunshine turns to broad.
oh, who are the stars on your lips with your muggin' and queer?
We'll both get married like.
I rip the projection in. Turn off the film. Stop the music.
During the war, men had actually spent a lot of time in one another's company. They'd been away from women. They relied upon one another for emotional sustenance, for friendship, for safety. And I think Martin Lewis became a way of carrying over into the post-war period the male bonding that had been so intense during the World War II years.
Excuse me, little lady. How about a little drink?
Please.
Everybody needs to care for somebody. All your dreams were meant to share with somebody.
Dan and Jerry broke up. They broke up because other outside influences got involved that shouldn't have. It was none of their business. In the likes of, oh, Dean, you don't need that kid. Oh, Jerry, you're better off without him. Dean, you can make more money without this kid. After a while, that starts to become your own thought process almost. They did the last film in 1956. They didn't even speak on the set throughout that whole production. I don't think the audience, even today, ever got over that. That was the worst divorce in showbiz history.
After the split, Jerry appeared in a series of formula comedies. They were formulas like they had been in the Martin Lewis days, pretty much putting him in a situation and just letting him run riot.
One of the most important relationships that develops in this period is the relationship he has with the film director, Frank Tashlin. By the time he's actually a solo performer, he wants to know more and more about how to make movies. And Tashlin is a great mentor. He sees Tashlin as a great metteur en scène, but also as a great director of comedy. And he learns a lot from Tashlin, and Tashlin takes the time to tell Jerry how to do it.
The day I walked on a motion picture set, the first day I knew I wanted to learn everything. And when they wanted me for a scene, I was in the wardrobe department, or the camera department, or the makeup department, the technical department, the miniature department. They could never get me on the set. I was learning. I was all over the yard. And I knew that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I was 34 when I directed my first film.
The Bellboy.
On January the 28th, I began writing a screenplay, which I completed 8 days later. 170-page screenplay. I sent for a crew of 150 people from Hollywood, and I was shooting The Bellboy in under 2 weeks from the time that I told him I'd give him product. I closed there after 28 days of shooting. I opened in Las Vegas, cut the picture in Las Vegas during the day, and the picture made over $7 million.
If you think you're getting a tip, you're crazy. I'm using my case money to buy a ticket to see a Bellboy, 'cause I hear it's funny. And it's got a series of silly sequences, and I like silly sequences. And Jerry Lewis is starring in it. That's right, Big JL himself, the tall nut. Now get out of here. You too.
I think one of the reasons why he chooses to make this particular film is he wants to demonstrate where his allegiances lie. He's honoring his heroes, Chaplin, Keaton, Stan Laurel, but also trying to kind of move away from the kind of formulaic comedies that he made often with Dean Martin. This is pure comedy.
Jerry really wanted Stan Laurel to be in a film with him. That was his dream. And Stan agreed to be in this movie. And just before they went into production, he felt quite ill and pulled out. So if you watch the film today, there's a Stan Laurel impersonator in the movie doing all the scenes that Stan should have done. They became very close. He almost mentored Jerry in Jerry's earlier career.
He used to say something to me. When you go out in front of an audience, tell them you're going to do something, then do it, then tell them it's been done. He was the genius behind Laurel and Hardy. They had a real love-in. They loved one another. They were great friends, just like Dean and I were.
Pour moi, le plus pur comique, c'est celui qui se passe du verbe. Quand on comprend quelque chose sans qu'on soit obligé de l'expliquer. Mais la leçon vient d'en haut, bien sûr, des débuts du cinéma comique, du cinéma muet, et qui ont toujours aujourd'hui une efficacité extraordinaire. Le temps n'existe plus. Ça, c'est aussi une des choses les plus précieuses. L'adversité est la chose la plus forte dans le comique. S'il n'y a pas un gros méchant et un petit faible, il ne se passe rien. De la même façon, des objets qui sont anodins, voilà que d'un seul coup, ils peuvent créer un cauchemar pour celui qui doit s'en servir. Et ce qui m'a frappé beaucoup chez Jerry, c'est que l'admiration qu'il porte à Chaplin repose justement sur toute autre chose que les maladresses.
I lived with Charlie in Switzerland for 2 weeks at his home. Incredible. For 2 weeks we were arguing about what was funny and what was not funny.
Chaplin réussit tout ce qu'il fait. Il a besoin d'exprimer qu'il domine les choses. Et ça, c'est le contraire de ce que fait Jerry. Et ça, pour moi, ça a toujours été un mystère. L'admiration qu'il porte à Chaplin est un mystère par rapport à ce phénomène-là.
Chaplin was the one that was embraced, and any comedian who came afterwards, who wrote and directed his own films, suffered by comparison. So when Jerry came along, Jerry Lewis of all people, the loud, crazy kid from the Martin Lewis films, decided he wanted to be a filmmaker. Well, I think that's a lot of the backlash because they thought, who does this guy think he is, Chaplin?
He also makes a guest appearance in the film as Jerry Lewis, the famous movie star. This is one of the first of many films in which Jerry Lewis is self-reflexively dealing with the phenomenon of being Jerry Lewis in the films.
Stop with the brushing! Let me have another cigarette, please. I'll smoke it dry. I'll smoke it dry.
Yes, sir, Mr. Lewis. We're all quite excited about your appearance at the Fontainebleau.
Lewis, once he actually starts directing films, wants his name on the movie. It's very important that the film says written, produced, directed by Jerry Lewis. He's stamping the film with his own marker, with his own signature.
But in the credits, he credits the character of Jerry Lewis to Joseph Levitch. So we're working on a few levels here. Jerry Lewis is not actually a person. Jerry Lewis is an act, is a performance by whoever Joseph Levitch is.
The mighty director. Shh!
Can't you see I'm creating? Oh, it's you, Mr. Bird. It's a pleasure to have you on the set.
Any director that I've ever dealt with, and those that ask me about my direction of a film, I think we all concur that you have to have a direction. As the director, who is the key factor in the film creation, you have to have a direction. Now, in the beginning, you're given the opportunity to start in creating the comic sequences without a form, without a pattern or a direction, because people want to see where you go. But once they have established the fact with you that they are satisfied that you're capable, they now want to see growth. And they want to see a formula and a pattern established, or they won't accept it. Because without pattern and without form in filmmaking, then you could always be referred to as a novice. And people will resent that. I'm going to work.
All right, places, please. All right, let's hear it for the movie star.
Hey,
Hollywood's biggest, most elaborate, most expensive studio stage set of all time is constructed before your eyes. And only one thing is missing to complete it all: the super nut. And here he is.
It's got incredible kind of mise en scène in this movie. He's constructed this huge doll's house set, and the camera cranes up and down around this set and constructs the film through this very artificial use of high-resource kind of technology, if you like. And the Welland house where the film is set becomes a metaphor for the artifice of Hollywood. And although he's not actually influenced by the French critics like Godin Truffaut this time, he's doing something very, very similar. He wants to use film as a way of shaping a perspective on the world. And at the same time, his films are being marketed to juveniles. They're children's films. So when he makes a film like The Ladies' Man, which is basically an art film, it's, critics in America are confounded. My God, what's he doing here? Why isn't he just being funny?
You felt you had to have a crane, you had to have practically everything that Hollywood could give you, and you feel more, and you feel it. You feel that you need everything there is.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone is good enough to work within four walls and to work with antiquated equipment. Our business is technology.
You've even invented a system of shooting.
Yeah. Well, in order for me to direct and be in two places, I had to devise an electronic concept alongside of my camera so that I could see what I was doing and see the actors on monitors, on television monitors. There wasn't anyone out there I would trust to say it was okay, etc. It's my ball and bat, that's all.
And you're also able to judge yourself. I mean, where you've gone wrong yourself.
Absolutely. I've seen many, many situations where I wasn't happy with the comedian and I had to get him to do it again. And if you think it's easy talking to me, you're crazy.
Jerry Lewis was certainly a rebel, but he was sometimes a rebel in spite of his own, maybe, desire to be. I think it has a lot to do with class, too. People don't often talk about that, but, a poor boy who becomes a rich boy and how you're supposed to behave in relationship to all of that. In one of his autobiographical books, he talks about, soon after he made it big in Hollywood, driving down in his convertible down Hollywood Boulevard or something, just blasting his horn as loud as possible just to show how important he was. It's like a kind of, something that you could say is offensive, but it's exactly what somebody who is powerless and has no money and then becomes rich is tempted to do.
He's more a painter, maybe, than a director.
Hi, honey.
He's working with space. He's not tracking like all those so-called modern movie makers and making fancy with the camera. He's just interested in framing. He's a very good framer, like great painters. He has a lot of sense of geometry. To be a comic, you have to be very capable in geometry. it's difficult to make a good picture.
Yeah.
And he knows. And I think he should be supported, and I'm one of his supporters.
Mm. But most people don't go to movies to see framing and technical ingenuity.
Yeah, but
they want to laugh or be entertained.
Yeah, but they receive picture through that.
Boy, what imagination can do for you.
Do you also find him funny?
Very, very. If not, no. I think it's very funny. Even when it's not funny, it's more funny. Because it's not funny.
Un garçon part en vadrouille au bord d'un étang. Il attrape une grenouille qui dit en tremblant: laisse-moi m'en aller et je te promets de réaliser 3 de tes souhaits. Fais un peu, mon bonhomme, car je peux, mon bonhomme, si tu peux, mon bonhomme, te donner le bonheur. Fais un peu, mon bonhomme, car je peux, mon bonhomme, si tu peux, mon bonhomme, te donner le bonheur.
Jerry Lewis, une première.
Moteur, première, une, s'il vous plaît.
Sois heureux, mon bonhomme, car ton mon bonhomme pour toujours, mon bonhomme t'a donné le bonheur. Mon bonhomme car ton mon bonhomme pour toujours, mon bonhomme t'a donné le bonheur.
Jerry, parlez-vous français? Maintenant. Un peu. Jerry Lewis, qui est notre hôte, et l'hôte de Paris depuis quelques jours. Un autre
Robert Benayoun, good friend. The French want everyone to think that they discovered me. And that's okay. They don't do that in Italy. They don't do that in Germany. Anywhere in the world. But the French, Jerry is mine.
I am happy to see you.
The key champion of Jerry Lewis in France, of course, was Robert Benayoun, who was fascinated by comedy in general, by American comedy, the Marx Brothers, I think W.C. Fields. He was somebody who saw artistry in this form of comedy that could transcend reality.
C'est quelqu'un qui distrait, dont on s'aperçoit, après un certain nombre d'années, qu'il a décrit, qu'il a démasqué un certain nombre de tares contemporaines, ou même la société à l'intérieur de laquelle il vit. Et c'est le cas de Jerry Lewis, dont on s'aperçoit qu'il est un satiriste. C'est-à-dire que si on veut lui trouver des comparaisons littéraires, finalement, c'est du côté de Molière d'une part, et de Beaumarchais qu'on devrait le situer. Et lui-même n'en est pas conscient.
In the world, we have 10,000 men who can do Hamlet.
What a rogue and peasant slave am I.
But we only have these men that can go, not only because it is difficult, but because it carries a heavy responsibility. And the 10,000 actors that do Hamlet don't have to check in with Shakespeare, but we have to check with them. They are our responsibility. Shakespeare didn't even show up today. Where he is, I don't know. I use crest.
Lorsqu'il était à l'Olympia, j'arrive un jour dans sa loge, et ça pour moi c'est inoubliable, et il me montre une photo qui avait été prise la veille. On voyait tout le public mort de rire sur un effet de Jerry. Lui, on ne le voyait pas, il était hors champ, bien sûr. Et il y avait au milieu un homme qui était comme ça. Il l'avait cerclé de blanc. Il m'avait dit, pourquoi ne rit-il pas? Et pour lui, c'était une douleur de penser que tout le monde riait sauf lui. Alors, ce n'était pas une frustration liée à un orgueil démesuré de son travail, c'était J'ai pas pu convaincre tout le monde.
When you see someone having an epileptic fit, a little part of your person is somehow sees that as a mirror of something hidden far inside. And I think that the French spectators are more comfortable with pathology. It's true that in the 1900s, deformity was the thing that made the public laugh the most.
Aux États-Unis, Jerry est considéré comme un cinéaste mineur parce qu'il s'adresse aux enfants, on ne le prend pas au sérieux. Et nous pensons que son comique est d'une perfection absolue et que depuis qu'il fait ses films lui-même, depuis qu'il les écrit, qu'il les réalise, qu'il les produit, il est arrivé à une sorte d'extraordinaire invention à tous les niveaux de la fabrication d'un film. I won't translate that because I was telling that you're a terribly good director and a fantastic...
The French, in a sense, gave us American cinema. The post-war critics in France, they hadn't seen any American films during the German occupation, and then all those films flooded into the country at once. And their appreciation of the films allowed us to see our pictures in a different light. But in Jerry Lewis's case, I mean, the idea that the French revered him became a joke in and of itself. And nowadays, the people who are keeping the joke alive know really nothing about Jerry Lewis and particularly his films. And of course, there's also the fact that he's, in terms of our culture, considered a mere comedian.
American society is by you examined very deeply. I don't know if you're aware of it, how deeply it is, and you also question it, as you would any society in which you live.
I try to knock down people who have no longer allowed themselves to be just people. You cannot make fun of throwing a snowball at a man in a felt hat, but you can make fun of when you throw the snowball at a black top hat. The why of it is because the black top hat is the man at the bank, a diplomat, a politician, or the man who owns the funeral parlor.
Both the Errand Boy and the Patsy are similar in the sense that they're Jerry's response to his lack of critical acceptance, and to a degree, the way he was treated by the Hollywood bigwigs, meaning that they just didn't understand why he wasn't content to churn out the same product, or why he wasn't falling in line, why he had to be an individual.
I know.
There are questions that don't get answered there, but it gives the audience time to think about it, which is good. If you get your audience thinking, you got half of the job done.
Oh, okay, let me start over again. They just didn't understand why he wasn't content to churn out the same product, or why he wasn't falling in line, why he had to be an individual. And tellingly, he did not change his path.
Realize that screw-loose imitation of a human being has disrupted this studio beyond control?
In a way, it's like a planned culture in America, but it's a culture that's planned by the studios, not by critics, not by the government, not by, it's, in fact, you could almost say the studios are the government.
You have to remember that in the United States in the 1950s and 60s, the male model, Jimmy Stewart, of course, comes to mind. But Jerry Lewis's character somehow evokes for that audience, the same audience, evokes a problematic male figure, to say the least. A male figure that is totally unpredictable, for one thing, can go off on an irrational tangent, is not in control. He's a dangerous figure for the American ideal of the proper way to behave.
Are there any requests?
Yeah, get off!
Thank you.
Yeah.
As a child, you have no filter and you don't know the rules of life or to be human, so you are much more open to exploring it. As you grow older, you become self-aware and want to fit in, and you're taught to not be as extroverted. That's not as accepted. But then when you're in society and you go, wait a minute, I loved being a kid and I loved doing that, and you don't lose that, I think Jerry's never lost that. And I think it's important for any performer to never lose that kind of freedom to just kind of say, F you, I'm gonna be out and open and a ball of energy. And if anybody has a problem with it, it's your problem. It's not mine.
How old are you?
6 years.
6. Me too.
One of the things that seems to me is the most profound thing that happened in his life was that his parents failed to turn up for his bar mitzvah when he was 13. It seems to me this explains an awful lot about Jerry Lewis's character, because when you're that neglected, you can never get enough attention. No matter how much attention you get later in life, it'll never be enough.
Jerry Lewis has said that an audience is like 1,000 mamas and papas patting you on the head and saying, good boy. So that validation, that endorsement that maybe was absent because the parents were absent is provided by an audience, and maybe that accounts for the hunger and the need to perform.
Non, je ne pourrais jamais vivre sans toi.
Går de bjørksvæler fra du, klart vi fistuler på. Les vieux l'habit-moi. Je pourrais
sans toi.
I think there's something with Jerry Lewis that might explain his international profile. He's somebody who plays a little guy who's hard done by, who has to win through, by virtues of the heart and also through his efforts, greater acclaim and acceptance. I don't think he necessarily represents the American dream. Although he is a very successful figure, I think he exposes problems within the American dream and problems within American social values in many of his films.
I think in a very profound way, Jerry Lewis is America. That's what's so fascinating about him. And Americans don't like to see themselves in the mirror when they look like Jerry Lewis. So the real interesting phenomena is not Americans hate Jerry Lewis, but that they love Jerry Lewis and don't want to admit it.
I'm just a human being with all of the foibles and all of the traps, the show, the pressure, the groupies, the autograph hounds, the crew, the incompetence, those behind the scenes you think are your friends and you're not too sure if you're going to be there tomorrow because of their incompetence. They're wonderful pressures that make every day a glowing, radiant day in your life. It's terrific. Okay, if all of that means nothing, if I'm wrong, in spite of all of that, then I apologize. I'm sorry.
In 1983, there's a very interesting turn in Lewis's career. He appears in a Martin Scorsese film, The King of Comedy, playing a role that's very unlike the Jerry of old. He's a talk show host. He's very sober, very stern, very joyless in this film. It's a very astonishing performance, but the critics responded to this film as if they'd never seen Jerry Lewis act before. So it's almost like the critics don't really have a framework for valuing, for understanding comic performance at all. It's only when Lewis becomes a serious actor that somehow he's seen to be credible.
Oh, Jerry, I love this guy. Always coming up with these great lines. I love him. I love him.
I know he's a great actor. I worked with him in King Comedy. He played it pretty straight, strong, up to a point, too. I mean, he'll look at me at one point and say, I can't do any more of this take. I said, it doesn't matter, you got it, 6, 7 times or whatever. I think you can see this, though, in a lot of the pictures with Dean Martin. The Stooge, maybe, The Bellboy, The Ladies' Man, which is visually one of the greatest, I think. But you can obviously, it's so obvious in the Nutty Professor. I mean, the Julius Kelp characters are grotesque. It's like a gargoyle that's come to life. It's frightening and funny. But the change to Buddy Love is the real scare. That's where you see the acting. That tilt up when you see who it is, from his shoes to the silk suit. And he's Buddy Love. And this is a great performance.
Professor? Professor!
Since I was probably 5, I thought about one day I'm going to perform in a great classic.
Professor!
And then I found it. Jekyll and Hyde.
Hey, that was terrific. Hey, did you hear that, folks? A regular George Bernard Shaw. Good boy. And he did it all by himself. You did it all by yourself and nobody helped you. That's terrific. And with your very own big mouth. Now, if you don't want this cocktail shaker to become a part of your gums, mix the drink, shut your mouth, and pay attention. Is that clear? Repeat after me. I'll pay. I'll pay attention.
I'll pay attention.
All right, let's continue.
I don't think it's a matter of proving your skills in drama. Maybe that's true of comic actors, but that's not Jerry, I think. I think he's a visual artist like Chaplin and Keaton, and he's got his own physical instrument. As an actor, would call it as a key element in the creation of his art. So in a sense, he was virtually alone in his time.
I don't know how many years of articles there has to be written of sad clowns. I mean, every person who's in the comedy business has a very serious side. And I love it when people are shocked to learn that. It's like how many stories you have to read before you realize Yeah, comedy comes from pain. Any comedy comes from pain. And that pain is real, and that pain is also another side to be explored as an artist.
When I look at Jerry Lewis, I know him. I know what he can do. I therefore try to steer his characters and his personalities in the areas where he is most comfortable. For he is a strange, unique, neurotic.
As soon as I find out what our travel...
You see, most people look at that and think that that is total makeup. Well, now I'll tell you something that I have never told anyone. This is makeup. That's clean. Because if you look at that, he won't hurt anybody. And he is who I think of all the time.
No more makeup. No more ghastly one-nighters. No more squealing brats.
He raises the enigma of identity to an interesting level. You know, we can watch Jerry Lewis exploring who Jerry Lewis is from film to film and across various different media articulations. I think he remains an enigma. Just as when you think you've identified who Jerry Lewis is, he does something else that challenges that presupposition.
When you walk through a storm, keep your chin up high, and don't be afraid of the dark.
By the early 1970s, Jerry became less active in filmmaking. A good part of that reason was because he became more involved with the annual MDA telethon, which was taking up more of his time and his attention. But also the fact he was experiencing health problems, and they precluded such a physically demanding process as directing movies. His fundraising actually began in the Martin Lewis days. The very first MDA telethon was hosted by Jerry and Dean. And it just blossomed from there because Jerry has always been interested in humanitarian causes, the muscular dystrophy cause being the closest to his heart.
Though your dreams be tossed.
So this is something that Lewis has devoted himself body and soul to for a very, very long time. And in fact, it was very hard to disentangle muscular dystrophy from Jerry Lewis. He became such a personification of the cause. And although that's actually now over, still in America, most people know Lewis, I suspect, for his humanitarian work rather than for his films.
You'll never walk alone. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Thank you and good night. When I went to the circus when I was 5 or 6, I met a lot of the clowns, and I met them throughout the years every time I went to the circus. Same clowns, older, but smart, very smart. I was putting on my clown makeup, and I had 24 of them around my table watching me make up. And in the mirror, you see 24 different clowns watching me. It was beautiful. Oh my God. This was my first professional picture. I was 16. The king. The king. Foo. This is the greatest love of my life. Right there. With her. Great love affair. All of my crew would go home after a day, and I take it home with me. From the time I was a kid, I always wrote about what I see in the world. I'm always looking and seeing the world. And I see it as it is, but I can tweak it and make it funny. He was closer to me than a brother, than a father, than a mother. He was closer to me than anyone else in my life ever. And I miss him today like I missed him the day he died. Doesn't change. Every day I think about him. Here's my hero. Nutty. Marty Scorsese. The American critics are full of shit. They have no idea what I'm doing. They never have. See, they wrote great critiques on King of Comedy because it wasn't lowbrow. It wasn't taking falls. It wasn't blah, none of that. And they liked that. Jerry's now working for them. You don't worry about them. You don't think about them. Or you would ruin your life. If you start to do what they say, you'd be finished. You'll be a critic in a small paper in Rochester, New York. My writing was to give pleasure. Every script I've written was for the audience to have a good time. I'm nostalgic about everything. Not any one thing, but many things. I've been very lucky. Look at all that. That's a lifetime of wonderful moments. I'm very lucky. I'm blessed. I've been given some wonderful abilities that help me get through to the public. And that's the bottom line of all of that is love. If you give love to your audience, they're going to give it back. You can't explain fame. So I said it's like a big balloon and a bunch of children around it with long pins. And if they buy a ticket, they've got the right to do that.